I was the heir to the Lancaster Group, and today was supposed to be the most important day of my life. The wedding was grand, planned to perfection, with the wealthiest families in the city in attendance. My bride, Monica, stood beside me in an exquisite gown, her delicate fingers gripping my arm. Everything was perfect, until her mother took a step forward and shattered it all. "Shane, before we proceed, we need an additional $2 million. The entire hall fell silent. A cold draft seemed to rush through the crowd. Guests exchanged looks of shock and disbelief. I frowned, my grip tightening around the bouquet in my hands. "What?" Her mother's expression remained calm, almost confident. $2 million, she repeated, her voice loud and clear. "Consider it a small show of sincerity. After all, you're about to marry my daughter." Monica flinched but said nothing. She didn't meet my eyes. Something inside me cracked. I had fought against my family for this marriage. I had defended her when everyone doubted her. And now, in front of the entire city, her family was treating me like a fool, like a walking bank account. I exhaled slowly, my heart hardening. Then, in one smooth motion, I turned around. I held out the bouquet to the bridesmaid standing just behind Monica. "Willow, will you marry me?" Gasps erupted from the crowd. Monica's face drained of all color. Her mother's arrogant smirk vanished. Willow blinked in shock. Then, under the stunned gazes of hundreds of guests, she took the bouquet from my hand. With a small smile, she said, "I will. I am Shane, the only heir to the Lancaster Group, one of the most powerful family businesses in the city. My life had been meticulously planned since birth, elite schools, business meetings before I was old enough to drink, and a future that had already been carved out for me. But the one thing I had fought for, against all odds, was Monica. We met 3 years ago at a charity gala. While others were there flaunting their wealth, Monica was different. At least, that's what I believed. She was standing alone on the balcony, looking at the city lights, lost in thought. When I approached her, she smiled but didn't flatter me like everyone else did. She didn't care that I was Shane Lancaster, heir to billions. Or so I thought. That night, we talked for hours. She told me about her struggles, about how she came from a traditional family that only valued men, how her father had never considered her important because she wasn't a son. She told me she wanted to escape, to have a life where she could be more than just someone's daughter, someone's sister, and I believed her. I fought for her. When my parents opposed our relationship, I stood my ground. When my friends warned me, I ignored them. Even when I heard whispers about her family's financial problems, I refused to believe that she was with me for my money. To prove my sincerity, I agreed to every condition her family set for our marriage. An extravagant wedding? Fine. A lavish dowry of $800,000? Fine. A mansion in her name? Fine. Because I loved her. I wanted to be the man who saved her. But love makes men blind. Her family, especially her mother, was never satisfied. They took my generosity as weakness. They believed that no matter how much they demanded, I would always give in. And maybe, if it were just Monica asking, I would have. But that night, standing at the altar, when her mother suddenly demanded another $2 million, I realized something. Monica didn't object. She didn't fight for me the way I fought for her. She stood there, silent. That was the moment I saw the truth. I wasn't saving her. I was just another fool in her family's game. And so, I turned away, looked at the woman standing behind Monica, the only person who had ever spoken up against her family's greed, the only one who had stood by my side when I had doubts. Willow, my childhood friend, my most trusted confidant. The one woman who had never tried to manipulate me, and in that moment, I knew what I had to do. With the entire wedding hall watching, I turned to her and said the words that changed everything. "Willow, will you marry me?" Monica's mother stood in front of the wedding room door, her arms crossed, a smug smile on her face. "Shane, your family can easily afford $2 million. We just want to see your sincerity. she said smoothly, as if she weren't extorting me in front of the entire city. Behind her, Monica's brother leaned lazily against the wall, arms folded across his chest. He was overweight, his bloated face dripping with sweat, and his voice was as disgusting as his arrogance. "Brother-in-law, just pay up already. The people I owe money to are waiting outside." A murmur spread through the groomsmen behind me. One of them, David, nudged me and whispered, "They're squeezing you dry, man. Are you really gonna let this slide?" I clenched my jaw, my fists tightening at my sides. I had known about Monica's family's financial problems, but she had always sworn she wanted nothing from me. She had begged me to save her from them. She had promised that once we were married, she would cut all ties. But now, standing outside that door, with her family treating me like an open ATM, I realized it was all a lie. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. I turned to Monica's mother, speaking slowly, carefully. "This wedding has already cost a fortune. There's the 800,000 dowry, the luxury villa, the extravagant ceremony. My family's finances are stretched." Monica's mother gave a forced laugh, exchanging a glance with her son before replying smoothly, "Shane, don't be so cold. This is just a little tradition. We're only asking for a bit more." "A bit?" My voice came out colder than I intended. 2 million wasn't a small amount, even for me. But it wasn't about the money. It was about principle. I turned to the door and called out, "Monica, if you want to marry me, open the door." For a moment, there was silence. Then, the door clicked open, but the person behind it wasn't Monica. It was Willow. She stepped out with a smirk, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Shane, I've been a cop my whole life, but this is the first time I've gone undercover at a wedding." I blinked at her in confusion. "Where's Monica?" Willow glanced behind her and whispered, "She's stalling. I heard her talking to her mother before I got in. She's waiting for you to pay." A cold realization settled over me. She wasn't going to open that door. She wasn't choosing me. She was choosing the money. Monica's mother, noticing my hesitation, took a step closer. Her voice dropped into something sweeter, more coaxing. "Shane, let's not make a scene. Just write a promissory note and everything will be fine." Monica's brother grinned. "Yeah, just sign the note. What's a couple of million to you?" I felt something inside me snap. I turned to Willow. She had opened the door for me. She had tried to warn me. I looked down at the bouquet in my hands. Then, with the entire room watching, I took a step forward, toward Willow, and held it out to her. "Willow, will you marry me?" Gasps filled the air. Monica's mother staggered back, her mouth opening in shock. Monica's brother went pale, his smug arrogance disappearing instantly, and then Monica finally appeared at the door, still in her white wedding dress, barefoot, panic flickering in her eyes. She looked at me, then at Willow, and whispered, "Shane, are you leaving me?" But I didn't answer. Because the moment Willow took the bouquet from my hand, I knew the answer already. Monica's face was pale, her delicate hands trembling as she clutched the fabric of her wedding gown. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something, but no words came out. She had stood behind that door waiting, not for me, but for money. I used to think she was fragile yet strong, a woman trapped by her cruel family, someone who needed me to save her. But now, she looked like a stranger. The entire hall was silent, all eyes shifting between me, Monica, and Willow, who still held the bouquet I had handed her. Monica's mother, who had been so arrogant just moments ago, rushed forward, grabbing my arm with a desperate smile. "Shane, don't be impulsive. It was just a small test, a little tradition. We would never force you to pay." I shook her off. "A test?" My voice was calm, too calm. "A test to see how much I'd be willing to humiliate myself for you?" Monica finally spoke, her voice trembling. I didn't know my mom was going to say that. I never wanted to ask for more money, I swear," I scoffed. "Then why didn't you stop her?" She flinched, guilt flashing in her eyes. She had known. She had heard her mother make that demand. She had listened to her brother laugh about his gambling debts, and she had stayed silent, because deep down, she wanted me to pay. If I had agreed, she would have married me without hesitation. The betrayal hit me like a wave, drowning out the noise of the wedding hall, all the fights I had with my family over her, the years I had spent proving my love, the promises she had made to me. It was all meaningless. I had been played. David, standing behind me, let out a low whistle and muttered, "Damn, that's cold." Monica's mother, realizing she was losing control, changed tactics. She forced a smile, stepping closer. "Shane, don't throw away your happiness over something so small. Monica loves you. Look at her. She's devastated. Do you really want to break her heart?" Monica looked at me with teary eyes, stepping forward. "Shane, I love you. I don't care about the money. Please don't do this." For a brief moment, the old sympathy I had for her resurfaced. The nights we spent together, the way she used to hold my hand tightly, whispering about her fears, the moments I thought were real. But then I remembered. She had a choice. She could have stood by me. She didn't. I exhaled sharply, my jaw tightening. "Monica," I said slowly, my voice tired, "if I couldn't come up with the money today, would you have married me anyway?" She froze. The hall fell dead silent. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her hands trembled as she struggled to find an answer. I already knew the truth. She hesitated. That hesitation destroyed any last ounce of love I had left for her. I turned to Willow, who had been standing quietly beside me. She wasn't pleading. She wasn't manipulating me. She was just there, the way she had always been. I reached for her hand, intertwining my fingers with hers. Monica let out a choked sob. "Shane, please." Her mother grabbed my sleeve again, her voice sharper now. "You'll regret this. Monica is the only woman who truly loves you. Do you think this girl," she pointed at Willow, "can compare?" Willow's grip on my hand tightened slightly, but she stayed silent. I turned to Monica's mother and smiled coldly. "I've already regretted. Enough." Then, without another word, I walked away, Willow beside me, leaving Monica and her family in ruins. I thought walking away from Monica and her family would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I arrived at my office, hoping to throw myself into work and forget about the disaster that had unfolded at the wedding. But the moment I stepped into the building, my secretary rushed toward me, her face pale. "Sir, Miss Monica is here." I froze. "What?" "She's waiting. In your office." She refused to leave. A cold chill ran down my spine. Why was she here? Hadn't she understood that it was over? I stepped into my office, and there she was, Monica, still in her wedding dress from the night before. The once pristine white gown was now wrinkled and stained, her makeup smudged from dried tears. She looked like a ghost of the woman I once loved. She turned to me, her eyes desperate. "Shane, I know I was wrong." I exhaled sharply, already exhausted. "What are you doing here, Monica?" She took a shaky step forward. "I just need to explain. I never cared about the money. My mother, she forced me. She said if I didn't go along with it, she'd cut me off completely. I had no choice." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "No choice? You had a choice the moment I asked you to. Open that door." Monica's face twisted in pain. "I was scared. My brother, he owes so much money. They said if we didn't pay, they'd cut off his hands. I couldn't let that happen." My patience was wearing thin. "So, you wanted me to pay for your brother's mistakes?" Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I thought you would understand. You said you loved me." I clenched my jaw. "I did." Past tense, her lips quivered. Then, can we fix this?" "Please, Shane. I don't care about the wedding, the money, I just want to be with you." I stared at her, feeling nothing but emptiness. She was saying all the right things now that she had lost everything. Where was this desperation yesterday? Where was this love when her mother demanded $2 million in front of the entire city? I stepped around my desk, keeping my voice calm. Monica, I don't trust you anymore. She flinched like I had just slapped her. You don't mean that. I do. Her breaths became shaky, her hands clutching her dress. Shane, don't say that. I love you. I stared at her. Love? This wasn't love. This was control. Sighed and turned toward the door. Monica, leave! Don't come here again! Just as I reached for the handle, she suddenly lunged forward, grabbing my sleeve. I'll do anything, she whispered, her voice raw. Just give me one more chance. I pulled away. No. Her body trembled violently. You're making a mistake. If you walk away from me, you'll regret it. I gave her one last glance. The only mistake I made was believing in you. And with that, I walked out of my own office, leaving her standing there completely shattered. For days after Monica showed up at my office, I thought I was finally free from her and her family's greed. I should have known better. One evening, as I was finishing a late meeting at the Lancaster Group headquarters, David rushed into my office, his face twisted in urgency. Shane, you need to see this. I frowned. What happened? David tossed his phone onto my desk. On the screen was a viral news article, and my name was in the headline. Lancaster heir's wedding scandal, a ruthless betrayal or just a misunderstanding. Beneath it was a photo of Monica sitting on the floor outside my office, still in her wedding dress, her face buried in her hands as she cried. The media had twisted the entire story, making it seem like I had humiliated her, abandoned her, and left her heartbroken at the altar. I cursed under my breath, scrolling through the comments. How could he humiliate her like this? What? A cold-blooded man. She loved him, and he just threw her away. Men like Shane only care about power and money. Poor Monica. She's the real victim here. My hands clenched around the phone. Monica had played her final card, public sympathy. She had spun the entire situation to make herself look like the innocent victim, while I was painted as the heartless fiancé who had thrown her aside. I slammed the phone down. That woman never stops. David nodded grimly. And that's not all. I heard from a contact. Monica's mother has been secretly reaching out to the board members of your company. She's trying to turn them against you. I let out a low laugh, but there was no humor in it. Of course she is. She couldn't manipulate me anymore, so now she was trying to ruin me. I grabbed my coat and strode out of the office. Where are you going? David called after me. To end this once and for all. I found Monica exactly where I expected, at her family's house. The moment I stepped inside, her mother greeted me with a smug smile. Shane, she said smoothly, I knew you'd come back. We're family after all. I clenched my jaw, my voice deadly calm. We were almost family, but after what you've done, that's never going to happen. She sighed dramatically, as if she were the one suffering. Shane, all we wanted was a little security for our daughter. Is that so wrong? I laughed coldly. $2 million is a little security? Before she could answer, Monica rushed out of the living room, her face filled with desperate hope. Shane, you came. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back, my expression blank. Her hands trembled. I didn't mean for things to get out of control. The reporters, the board members, I didn't do that, I swear. My mother, she acted on her own. I tilted my head, studying her. Then why didn't you stop her? Monica opened her mouth, then closed it. Silence. It was the same hesitation she had shown on our wedding day. The same moment of weakness that had cost her everything. I let out a slow breath, the final realization sinking in. Monica, I said, my voice eerily calm, you never loved me. You loved what I could give you. Her eyes widened, and she shook her head violently. No, that's not true. I loved you, Shane. I still do. I stared at her for a long moment. Then, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a neatly folded check. I held it up between two fingers. "You want money?" I said coolly. "Here, 2 million, take it." She froze. Her mother snatched the check out of my hand before Monica could react, her greedy eyes scanning the numbers, but I wasn't done yet. I smirked. "There's just one condition." Monica blinked. What condition?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "You take this money, and you never show your face in my life again." Her mother's face lit up. "Of course. We accept." But Monica suddenly lunged forward, ripping the check from her mother's hands. She stared at it for a long moment, her breathing uneven before tearing it in half. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I don't want your money." I felt nothing. Monica had spent years convincing me she was different from her family, that she wanted love, not wealth. But in the end, the moment she realized she couldn't have both, she finally chose. I turned toward the door. "Goodbye, Monica." As I walked away, her voice broke behind me. "Shane, please don't go. I can change. Just give me another chance." I didn't look back, because this time I was done. That night, I went home and opened a bottle of whiskey. For the first time in years, I felt free. Monica had played her final game, and she had lost. David called me. "So, how did it go?" I smirked. "She won't be a problem anymore." He let out a low whistle. "Damn. Well, at least now you can finally move on." I leaned back, taking a slow sip of my drink. Move on? My gaze drifted to my phone, where a single unread message waited. From Willow. For the first time in a long time, I felt something stir in my chest. Hope. For days after I walked away from Monica, I expected her to try something again. Another attempt at public sympathy. Another scheme to manipulate her way back into my life. Another lie to make me question myself. But nothing happened. Instead, Monica and her family disappeared. No calls, no messages, no sudden appearances outside my office. It was over, or so I thought. One evening, just as I was about to leave work, my secretary knocked on my office door. "Sir, Miss Monica is here." I froze, my fingers tightening around my pen. I had nothing left to say to her. Still, I exhaled sharply and nodded. Let her in. When Monica walked in, she looked different. Her once perfectly styled hair was a mess, her designer dress wrinkled. There were dark circles under her eyes, her usual confidence replaced by exhaustion. For the first time, she didn't look like the manipulative woman who had tried to play me. She just looked lost. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my expression unreadable. "What do you want, Monica?" She swallowed hard. I just wanted to talk." I raised an eyebrow. "Talk?" She nodded, taking a slow step forward. "I know you hate me. I know I made mistakes. But Shane?" Her voice wavered. "I really did love you." A bitter smirk tugged at my lips. "You loved me, or you loved what I could give you." She flinched. I didn't mean for things to go that way. My family, my mother, they pushed me." I tilted my head. "And you let them." Tears welled in her eyes. I was scared. I thought if I lost you, I'd lose everything. I let out a humorless laugh. "So, you wanted me to pay for your brother's gambling debts? Let your mother control our marriage?" She shook her head frantically. "No, I didn't think you'd leave me like that. I thought you'd fight for me like you always did." I studied her carefully. "And what would have happened if I had given you the 2 million? What next? 5 million? 10? She didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. I leaned forward, my tone calm but final. "Monica, you and I were over the moment." You hesitated. Her lower lip trembled. "So, there's really no chance?" I shook my head. "No." She let out a choked sob, wiping at her eyes. I don't know what to do now, Shane. My family is ruined. My brother is in trouble again, and my mother is already looking for her next target. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I should have felt sorry for her, but I didn't, because she made her choice, and now she had to live with it. I stood up and walked toward the door, opening it. Goodbye, Monica. She looked at me one last time, as if memorizing my face. Then, without another word, she walked out of my life. For good. The following weeks were quiet. For the first time in a long time, I didn't have to deal with Monica, her mother, or their endless greed. I could finally breathe. And then, there was Willow. Ever since the wedding fiasco, she had been keeping her distance. She was always around, helping, making sarcastic remarks, pretending everything was normal. But I could tell something had changed, and it was driving me insane. One night, after a long business dinner, I found her sitting outside my office, sipping on her usual coffee. She raised an eyebrow as I walked up to her. "You look exhausted," I smirked. "And you still look like you're about to punch someone," she grinned. "Always." I hesitated, then sat down beside her. For a long time, we just sat there, the city lights glowing around us. Then, finally, I spoke. "You never asked me why I chose you." She blinked, taken aback. "What?" "At the wedding," I murmured, watching her carefully. "Why did I choose you, Willow?" She shifted uncomfortably, looking away. "Because you were mad at Monica." I laughed softly. "Wrong." She frowned. "Then why?" I leaned in slightly, my voice dropping. "Because I trusted you." She froze, her eyes widening. "Because you were the only one who stood by me," I continued. "The only one who didn't try to manipulate me. The only one who saw what was happening and still chose to fight for me." Her hands clenched around her coffee cup. "Shane," I smirked. "And you think I'd let a woman like that slip away?" She stared at me, her face unreadable. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she sighed. "You're really annoying, you know that?" I chuckled. "I've been told." And then she smiled, a real, genuine, breathtaking smile, and for the first time in years, I knew. I had finally made the right choice. Weeks later, news spread that Monica's family had finally fallen apart. Her mother had been caught scamming investors, her brother had fled the city, and Monica had disappeared from the public eye. One night, I got a message from an unknown number. "Monica, I hope you're happy now." I stared at the screen for a moment before replying. "Me, I am." And for the first time, I truly meant it.